indication that the original Parkway residents were entering the streets as well. The Parkway teenagers could potentially not like these other hoods moving into theirs, and maybe they'll want to send a message. Things could potentially get ugly, and there was only one way to keep the peace. The Parkway Gardens residents need to agree to unify as one and to leave alone their past affiliations. So here's how it plays out. One particular Parkway native would step up to unify everyone who was.
This will be a gold mine, local intel.
Tell us about this corn festival. Oh, you got your corn pudding. Oh, is it safe around here?
Moving in. This would be O.D. Perry, one of the most charismatic yet dangerous teenagers you'll ever meet.
Tell me about O.D. Perry. This is your best friend.
Folks was gangster. He was real savage. Folks was just like a young wild. He had home. He was fearless. He ain't had no fear. Ain't nothing he was really scared of.
According to many, O.D. Perry was like the leader of the new generation of Parkway.
This like our big brother type shit. Showing us the ropes as far as like small shit. Got a little money on the shit, like a few thousand, motherfuckers didn't have money back then. So we started doing the same thing. Same thing.
O.D. Perry was a dangerous teenager, but instead of pushing people away, he wanted to unify Parkway as one. Essentially, him and his little homie T. Roy were the ones to welcome everyone in and have them all pushing Parkway. On top of this, O.D. was very advanced, and he was known to put a lot of people from the younger generation onto his lifestyle. But on the flip side, if they ever had issues with people in school or on the streets, O.D. was always there to back them up. To him and T. Roy, they saw loyalty as the only way Parkway would ever survive the streets of Chicago. You must always have your brother's back, right or wrong, and crossing them, you better not do it. Okay, so you might be sitting in your house in Santa Rosa, California, thinking, why would living in a specific apartment complex be this serious? Like, why do they all have to be unified, and who's even out there among them? So let me explain the dynamic. Right across King Drive, you have the reputed STL Gangster Disciples. For years, these were the bullies of the whole Woodlawn area, and they always took Parkway as a joke. But with this generation led by OD and Boss Top, the Parkway Gardens were not going to put up with this. So every single day in the mid-2000s, there were fights both in school and on the streets. It continued like this for a few years. Thankfully, no one ever died. But then O.D. Perry decides that it's time to go full-fledged on the rivals, no more fighting. He allegedly tells all of the younger homies like T. Roy that fighting is no longer allowed and it's time to start sparking sticks. He did this to prepare the youngins that the Parkway Gardens were now becoming implicated in a serious deadly beef. Specifically, the local gangs of STL, Jarrow City, and 051 Young Money were clicked up against 600 and Front Street. And because Parkway had clicked up with the latter two hoods, they were becoming targets in the beef themselves. Yeah, things were about to get ugly, and he wanted to make sure that his hood was ready for real beef. Because once the beef crosses that line, everyone from the hood will now be a target. Well, because of OD, the beef would definitely cross that line. On January 12, 2011, Park saved the life of 15-year-old Shondale Tuka Gregory at a bus stop on 63rd. From all accounts, Tuka wasn't even in the beef, he just so happened to hang out with the members in the neighborhood.
He just wanted to do right to make the crowd, that's all. Was he game play? No.
The loss of Tuka devastated the 63rd community, and especially his best friend, FBG Doug.
And me and him clicked. Like, that was one of my real close friends. Like, every day, like, spend the night at his house, he spent the night at mine.
Doug was at home when he heard the shots, and he went out running to see what happened. And that's when he saw his friend's last breath.
You feel me? Then I ran all the way from 62nd and Wabash all the way to 630 St. Lawrence. Saved him right there on the floor.
After grieving this terrible loss, they now needed to know who did this. STL quickly found out that O.D. Perry was the one responsible.
Knew exactly who killed Tuka right away because it was so many people out there. Walked up and only killed Tuka, only shot Tuka.
He was at the bus stop.
Yeah, he's at the bus stop. There's the bus stop. 6 people. He killed Tuka.
O.D. Perry was the shooter.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Because of this horrible event, STL was ready to get revenge on Parkway. And because of this, the younger generation of Parkway was now forced to get violent as well. According to T. Roy, he was already ready to get stepping, but unexpectedly, one of his friends would as well. This would be a friend who had only moved into Parkway a year before this incident. This would be 15-year-old Davon Bennett, who was already a goon in his previous hood. But not only was he a goon, he was also charismatic and extremely handsome. I'm just kidding. Well, as soon as he moved in, he was treated like family, with Odie welcoming him and T-Roy becoming his best friend. Like, for whatever reason, him and T-Roy hit it off the first day, so much so that Vaughn was willing to slide for him. And just like that, Parker was developing their first official goon squad. They weren't even a gang, they were just guys who held loyalty and brotherhood over all else. They started calling themselves Wick City. Wick for wild, insane, crazy, and 3 eyes to show media alliance. Still though, after the death of Tuca, nobody respected them because they never had history of beef.
But yeah, that was the name, Wick City, and people used to make fun of us because, like, you know, like growing up on food stamps and stuff, you get called the Wick.
Well, little did Southside Chicago know, the Parkway Gardens were filled with young and wicked goons. Obviously, they were led by Odie and Boss Top, but the young guys were equally as wild. Miniature T-Roy and super handsome Vaughn were like beasts that were ready to be unleashed. All they needed was a reason to start stepping, and sadly that reason would come. After the loss of Tuca, STL was determined to get revenge on OD. And that day would come, August 10th, 2011. It's shortly after midnight, and OD Perry hops on his bike to head to the local store. As he exits the Parkway Garden gates, an SUV right there stops in its tracks. That's when 2 assailants hop out and run down on OD. This was a huge moment in Chicago history, and the Parkway Gardens were absolutely shocked. OD was one of those staples in the community that you can never imagine losing.
Because he was like one of our first ones that we lost. Like, we weren't losing friends at the time or losing close ones at the time. So when we lost touch, we felt it.
To his significance, everyone decided to ditch the Wick City name and adopt Ovlock in his commemoration.
I remember the day after OD died, man, and I was like, damn, I wonder what the hell we finna call the block now. And then as soon as like we came around, we all the way on the 65th end, and I saw that bitch right there, spray painted on the garbage can, O-Block. I'm that's all that shit. I'm like, I knew they was gonna call this bitch O-Block, like I knew he was gonna.
The loss of OD brought everyone in Parkway even closer together than before. They were still there for this. For whatever reason, it brought them an inexplicable bond. Nothing could ever separate or divide O-Block, as they were now all together in his commemoration. OD was big on everyone sticking together, so if we ever get in fights with our brothers, we're never taking it too far. Remember this for later in the video. Well, after the loss of OD, T-Roy and Vaughn would go absolutely nuts for revenge.
It was sad, man, that then T-Roy was right there with him his last couple moments, and T-Roy, and then T-Roy said that, oh, like, damn, they got me, bro. Like, that was his last words into that. So that shit changed T-Roy. That shit changed T-Roy. That shit happened to Troy and Vaughn. What the jumped off head first, and when they did, they jumped off at a higher level, more aggressive than the who was around or was.
T-Roy, Vaughn, and the rest of Parkway believed that it was a 14-year-old girl named Chicago Barnes who did this to OD. But not only this, her brother would insinuate it as well.
She killed someone at 14 as revenge over Tuca.
Man, OD got this shit splatted.
Odie Perry got killed at one point.
But even after claiming the life of OD, the STL saw.
Marcus is a connoisseur of anything that's free. So he would want me to read the disclaimer on TurboTax Free Edition.
37% of taxpayers qualify. Form 1040N limited credits only. See how at turbotax.com. That's me.
File your taxes 100% free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your max refund guaranteed. Make your moves count. See if you qualify at turbotax.com.
It was not done stepping. In fact, 3 more O-Block members would lose their life in the coming months.
Sure, they were saying they told Julie.
So with all these O-Block losses, Miniature T-Roy and Handsome Vaughn were ready to start stepping. Ooh-wee. In fact, over the next year, the duo would go absolutely nuts. They would allegedly claim the lives of rival members Lil Doc, Dirty Rel, Odell, P5, Boss Trell, Lil James, and Stunna. 2012 was a truly dangerous year to be a rival of Oblock. Then in 2014, they would finally get real revenge for the loss of OD. On April 11th, 2014, Jakira K.I. Barnes was targeted in the heart of STL territory.
I love her, and I'm gonna fight for her, for her justice, because I don't think it's fair that we're losing our kids being gunned down every day in the streets.
I wish I was laughing with my sister, folks. I wish I was sending my sister this money. I wish I was sending my sister these pictures of me at these interviews on these platforms. I wish I was showing courage. So that hurt my soul every day.
This was a massive loss for the STL side, and it marked that now the beef was way past any. Vaughn and T. Roy were their biggest targets, but for the meantime, they wouldn't be touchable. They both went to jail, and T. Roy also went on tour with his friend Chief Keef. Regardless, though, T. Roy was bound to return to Chicago, and this is when O-Block would take their next massive loss. It's Valentine's Day, where most couples are spending time with their lovers, and where single girls are taking pictures on Instagram with flowers that they bought themselves. But when you're O-Block's biggest stepper, there's no time for the lovey-dovey. At 11 in the morning, T-Roy notices that his aunt posted a picture on Instagram, and he instantly knows the location. So right away, he hops on the bus and heads down to his aunt's location. When he gets there, he doesn't notice anyone outside, so he decides to walk block by block looking for his aunt. Little does he know, an STL member happens to live in the area and spots him walking around. So the man whose name is FBG Brick calls a fellow STL member named TB and tells him what he saw. So instantly, TB and his friend allegedly head down to T-Roy's location. When they get there, they notice him walking into a convenience store, so they quietly follow him in. That's when they get up close to him, corner him in, and make a terrible decision. Everything froze for O-Block. It may be hard to understand, but T-Roy was like the most important member of the community. Not only was he an original Parkway resident, but he was also one of the first people to jump off the porch.
Troy used to call me his son, man. When I first jumped out the porch, man, Troy was one of the, man, like Troy, he was a little evil, trying to teach me how to drill. Like, he trying to teach me how to drill, what to aim, what to go for, what to hit. Folks ass ended up telling you, like, yeah.
From all accounts, after the loss of OD, T-Roy was the head honcho of O-Block. Not only was he sliding on rivals, he was also keeping O-Block united and checking any members who fell out of line.
What about T-Roy, man? When you were
that's on the block. T-Roy was T-Roy. T-Roy, I definitely say he gotta take it, bro, because T-Roy was just, he was ruthless.
T-Roy's loss affected no one more than his best friend Vaughn, who at the time was fighting a murder case and sitting in jail. Vaughn was devastated about the loss of his best friend, and he urged the next generation of O-Block to step up and start sliding. This is how Get Back Gang formed, which is essentially the second generation of O-Block. A bunch of O-Blockians who were never in the streets decided to step up and strap on their cleats. These included T-Roy's little brothers Hank and Zell Munna, who were never in the streets before. In fact, for their entire childhood, T-Roy sheltered them from the streets and made sure they would never be in this position. But after their big brothers lost, the formerly good kids would go on an absolute tear. While not only would the young guys step up, but the older generation of O-Block would as well. Essentially, every generation of O-Block united as one, all in the name of Get Back for T-Roy. While the rival hoods had internal affairs and backdoor activities, O-Block was solid as a rock. Get Back Gang would prove to be one of the most ruthless organizations in Chicago history. With so many members sliding at once, the rival side was taking losses left and right. Get Back Gang would claim the lives of Poppy, Kobe, FBG Break, TV, Radio, and Get Right.
I can't.
No one.
Safety is always top of mind for us. Having Granger as a partner, they make it very easy for us.
All of this happened just a year after T-Roy's loss. They obliterated the other side to the point where everyone assumed that STL was basically extinct. And because of all this destruction, the beef had no choice but to calm down. During this quiet period, King Von was actually able to beat his murder case and was released back onto the streets. This couldn't have been at a better time, because had he been released earlier, he may have thrown his life away getting back for T-Roy. But now that the streets were quiet, Von was able to focus on his newly found love. Instead of chasing down ops, he was now chasing down studios.
With therapy, he doing all this shit and shit, so that's another time. It was just the point, like, I'm on the block, I got steady ass for money. Yeah, so now I need something to do.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do?
On May 27, 2018, he released his first single, Beat That Body, which got him popping in the Chicago streets. And with Dirk's cosign and consistent success, his career took off in a major way. So with all this new fame and money, Von decided to move to Atlanta where he could thrive and not think about nothing process. The future was looking bright for Von and the rest of O-Block, but then everything would come crumbling down. On August 4th, 2020, 6 members of Get Back Gang would crash out in the dumbest way possible. Essentially, STL's biggest rapper FBG Duck is spotted at the mall by a man who doesn't like him. The man is upset that Duck is having relations with his girlfriend, and he wants to do something about it. But instead of confronting him himself, he decides to call up Duck's biggest ops. He calls up Get Back Gang and makes up a lie that Duck chased him through the mall with a... So instantly, 6 Get Back Gang members hop in 2 cars and leave out of O-Block. They head directly to Duck's location, which happens to be the wealthiest mall in all of Illinois. They drive around until they spot him outside in line of the Dolce & Gabbana store, and that's when the members make their tragic decision. This right here was the sloppiest drill that they had ever done. Not only did they do it in the richest part of Chicago, they also never took the license plates off their cars. Because of this, they were all bound to get arrested. Only a matter of time. This dumb decision would end up being the very end of Get Back Gang. Then, just a few months later, O-Block's leader would lose his life. On November 6, 2020, Von would lose his life in Atlanta after a serious altercation.
Have been following all morning long. 2 men killed in an overnight shootout with Atlanta police and 2 groups of people. Joe Ripley has more as the GVI steps in to investigate.
Atlanta police say 2 people are dead after an officer-involved shooting here on Trinity Avenue in downtown. As dawn turned to daylight, you could make out dozens of evidence markers. GBI crime scene investigators combing the scene.
Pretty active scene, pretty chaotic.
Von was truly the king of O-Block, as he was the one who was keeping everyone together and also making sure that everyone was putting in work. On top of this, he was the bridge between the younger and older generations, making sure that respect was always intact. In Chicago, the young generations of hoods have been known to backdoor the OGs or anyone who they know. It's nothing like LA where there's structures and commands of respect. It's pretty much everyone's free for all. However, because of OD, T-Roy, and then King Von, everything in O-Block was always intact. But now, you'll see what happens. While Get Back Gang was fading away, a new generation of O-Block was coming up out of nowhere. But this generation is rarely heard about, as many people believe that O-Block died when King Von did. This couldn't be further from the truth, as Von left them an awful legacy to look up to. As much as he was praised and idolized for what he did, you could only imagine that the misguided youth would try to imitate his life. But unlike Von, this generation has no loyalty to those around them, and they'll even cross an OG if they want to. But first, let me introduce you to the next generation. We start out with a teenager named Jamon Brown, commonly known as Manamon. As a kid, Mon spent his whole childhood in O-Block witnessing all of the tragedies you've seen in this video. But despite this adversity, Mon had a good head on his shoulders and was able to do well in school through all the chaos. I mean, he even played on his high school soccer team. So while his friends were already in the streets, he was mainly focused on college and his financial future. Well, his determination would pay off as he was accepted to Western Illinois University, where he enrolled as a freshman. Life was looking like a success story for Jamal, but after a few months in college, things would take a sharp left turn. On November 20th, 2019, Jamon was having mental outbursts in his dorm, prompting other students to call security. So security comes and they notice that he's acting erratic and uncontrollable. He won't answer questions or sit down, so they decide to call an ambulance to transport him to the hospital. There, Jamond is visit.
Have you ever wanted to drive for Uber or Lyft but didn't have a car? Now you can. Meet Hire, the only peer-to-peer car rental platform where you can rent a car for Uber, Lyft, Postmates, or any other number of
Who tries to make attempts to understand what's going on. Typically, college students can have breakdowns due to stress or social pressure, but this case was a little bit different. Jamond had witnessed so much trauma in his life, and much of it was boiling up inside without any help. Well, because of the severity of his mental state, the psychologist asks him to stay in the hospital until he fully calms down. But Jamond understandably wishes. Well, little does he know, his university banned him from ever returning to the dorms. So as soon as he enters the building, he's noticed by security, who decides to call 911. So police instantly come to his dorm and arrest him for trespassing. But Jamond resists the arrest and won't comply, prompting the officers to take him to jail. This is truly sad because Jamond needed help from the university and the system, not to be trespassed and arrested. Like, how does this possibly help in the situation? Now you're gonna turn a kid who's seeking mental health into a criminal? Well, sadly, the situation would get even worse. During the ride to jail, Jamond has another outburst where he kicks the door and says that he's gonna blow things up.
Can't even go to school without y'all raising people. Like, what the fuck? Y'all don't get sick of raising people home. Y'all don't even know it's wrong, bro. Y'all just can't get no peace, bro. You get arrested for nothing. This makes no sense. Like, no sense, bro. And no sense. I promise you, God will blow this up. I swear to God, I will. I swear to God, I will. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a
Now Jamond was in serious trouble, facing multiple charges and being expelled from school. But thankfully he was blessed with a forgiving judge, and eventually his charges would be dropped. Sadly though, he now had to return to O Block, where his surroundings instantly got worse. Trust me, the Parkway Gardens is no place for anyone dealing with mental health. And on top of this, his return home would be at the worst time possible, as it was right at the start of a new generation of O Block versus Taekwondo World beef. While Jamond was off in college, his friends were jumping off the porch on the rocks. And on that note, let me introduce you to the new generation of O Block. First, you have Jamond's best friend named Lil Mike, a young dude who's known for being reckless in the streets. Then you have Taekwondo Manny, also known as TQ, a 17-year-old known for getting money. Next, you have his older brother DQ, who's on the same height, but he's also trying to be the next King Kong. And finally, you have the young guys Jado, Nuwop, and the youngest Time Money. So directly after Mond's return from college, this is exactly what he was hanging with. And just 2 weeks after his return, things would get tragic for the first time in this generation. That takes us to December 8th, 2019. It's a Monday afternoon in O Block, and TQ gets ready to do business in another hood. Specifically, he heads 15 minutes down the road to a hood called Fintown. Fintown has nothing to do with O Block, so TQ figures that everything is straight. So he arrives in their hood and waits on 87th in order to make a deal that he set up online. He waits and waits and waits, but suspiciously nobody shows up. Then after 10 minutes of waiting, a man in a mask approaches him quickly, and sadly the man makes a tragic decision. Everyone was devastated, but also puzzled about the situation. Who could have done this to TQ, and why did they set him up? At first, it didn't make any sense, but then the Oblockians started putting 2 and 2 together. And it all centered around an alleged Fintown member named BCR Measle. Why? Well, because he happens to be the first cousin of FBG Dub. Now, of course, this is just speculation, but later in the video it will make sense. So remember the name, BCR Measle. Well, regardless, this is when the new generation of O-Block decided to step up. This includes Manavant and, of course, all of the other members I mentioned. But before there was Get Back, sadly, they would lose another friend. 2 months later, February 8th, 2020, 2:30 p.m. Jado gets a text from his friend Dinero asking him to come over and make a deal. So Jado instantly gets ready so that he can head over there. But as soon as he departs from O-Block, a man is following him. He catches up to Jado and doesn't say a word. Instead, he makes a terrible decision. Jado was like the OD Perry or the T. Roy of the new generation. He was charismatic, he brought everyone together, but he was also nothing to play with.
He was like,
like our age group, like the new generation from our block, he was the leader. I'm gonna say, yeah, he's like the brain, like one of the smartest ones out of us.
You wanna do, yeah, like, that don't make sense, yeah. Like, he's in about, now he wanna push a nigga. Like, man.
Well, because he was so important to O-Block, the young generation started calling themselves the Jado Jumpouts. Now everyone was on board to get revenge for Jado, but there was one question. Who did this, and did De Niro set him up? Well, right after the news broke, De Niro posted a screenshot of his last conversation with Jado, pretty much saying that he wishes he never texted him because that way he would have never come outside. So now that De Niro was in the clear, who could it have possibly been? Well, the rival Taekwondo World side started celebrating, which pretty much revealed itself. Specifically, a Taekwondo World member named D Money would go on live and troll Jado.
Jado got it smoke. And we still split like 5 pounds deep, no rap.
This would not end well for D Money. May 15th, 2020. It's a nice warm evening in Southside Chicago, and D Money is outside walking his dog. As he's casually walking around his neighborhood, a car creeps up on him. That's when a man hops out of the passenger seat and runs all the way up to him. And before D Money can even react, the man makes a terrible decision. And just like that, another generation of Taekwondo World versus O-Block beef was stamped. It's the same exact way that T-Roy and Vaughn went on a tear for OD, and then how Get Back Gang went on a tear for T-Roy. If one thing is for certain, it's that starting a beef with O-Block is never a good idea. Once you poke the bear, they just never stop coming, and there's no timeline of revenge. And that fast forwards us a year to February 8th, 2021. In Chicago, trying to throw parties or just having fun with your friends is never an easy task. You never know if your ops are going to show up to the party or if a simple argument will turn deadly. So because of this, many people from the hood in Chicago will head out to other cities to have some fun and peace. Sometimes they'll go up to Milwaukee, out to Iowa City, potentially down to Indianapolis. But for FBG, they tend to stay closer to home in the tucked-off suburb of Bloomingdale. In particular, they rent out a couple rooms at the Indian Lakes Hotel where they can have some peaceful fun. Well, on this particular Friday night, the word gets out and over 200 people show up to the hotel. This includes FBG Dem's cousin Measle, who O-Block believe claimed the life of TQ. Because of this, Measle happens to be one of the most wanted men in Southside Chicago. But on this night, he figures no one will find him, so he'll sit back and have some good old fun. The party's jumping, girls are twerking everywhere, and everything is going well for over an hour. It gets to the point where the whole 6th floor hallway is flooded with people, and it's a party like you've never seen before. Well, at 2 a.m., a couple of men in masks wiggle through the hallways looking for Measle. They then push their way into the party where they see him. Sadly, they make a tragic decision.
That's right. Right now, police still here on scene of the hotel serving search warrants, looking for evidence like weapons linked to this investigation. Please tell me this isn't the first time they've been called to the hotel. It was the sound of gunfire coming from the Indian Lakes Hotel around 2:30 this morning that prompted this massive police response. What police say started as a large hotel party with nearly 200 people ended in gunfire, and a Chicago man is dead.
Unfortunately, there may have been more of us. People fled the hotel before we had contact.
The victim identified as 27-year-old James McGill. McGill lived in the city's Inglewood neighborhood. Police say they've been called out to the hotel for drug and gun cases in the past, even writing a letter to hotel management asking them to address these issues.
Security, additional staff, management on duty. So we've conveyed to them that we have concerns with it. It's predicted that something could happen there.
During the party, which spanned 2 floors, investigators say only one employee was working and no security on scene.
Well, because of this incident, the owners of the Indian Lakes Hotel were forced to shut down their business. So not only did May 15th claim a life, but it also claimed a major business for a family.
New Hotel, the Indian Lakes Hotel in West Suburban Bloomingdale, will shutter for good after a deadly shooting there last month. Today, the hotel's owner, First Hospitality Group, agreed to surrender its business license and end all business on the property. Bloomingdale village leader said the hotel had been a trouble spot for years.
Well, even though there were 200 people at the party, 0 people came forward with evidence. So of course we don't officially know who did this, but a Google member would post something on his story. The day after the incident, he would post a picture with a cut of TQ. He'd say, and now his killer is dead.
Yes. I
On top of
finally
this,
see
just the next day,